I want to talk to you about something else today. I want to go all the way back to my high school days and tell you a little bit about myself. I am a tennis player, and when I was in high school, that's really about all I cared about. And I played tennis 5-6 days a week, 11 months out of the year. I lived in Texas, and we didn't have the same kind of limitations on high school and collegiate sports, and I played tennis all the time. And when I came to college in California, to Christian College, it's now called Point Loma Nazarene College. And when I got there a couple of days early, and I arrived on campus, the only person there, and I was just walking around seeing what the area that was going to be my home for the next 4 years. And I walked into an administration building, and it was where all the administrative activities take place. And right in the center of that building was a glass trophy case where the athletic accomplishments of the school, everybody has one of those, most schools do. And there were all these trophies and everything going back for many years. And right in the center of that trophy case was the big perpetual tennis trophy for the people that won the best tennis player of the school and the big tournament and everything. And I stood there and I dreamed. You could almost hear my dreams out loud. And I was saying to myself, someday, man, someday I'm going to get my name on that. I mean, the names went back to 1946, and I said, someday I'm going to get my name on there. And that, I hate to tell you this, but at 18 years of age, that's my highest goal in living, was to get my name on that trophy case. And I did it. In fact, I did it twice. My name is engraved there, and it was left in the center of that trophy case for other students to come in and admire my accomplishments and, just smile and say, someday I'm going to be like him. Well, that's the way my thought process went when I was 18. About 15 years later, a friend of mine was up on that campus, and he had a reason to be around behind the building. And in the dumpster, he found my trophy. Here I am, a legend in my own mind. They threw it away. It was there. And so he got it, and he cleaned it up, put a little new man on the top. And my name got engraved, and there it was. And it sits in my office today, and if you would like to come by and admire it. But because you probably won't do that, I can tell that you're impressed. And, the school not only threw this away, but they only engraved my name on one time down here, and I won it twice. So it is just a sad chapter in my life. Now, what I want to tell you is long enough, and it is true. It won't matter anymore. The thing that was your highest aspiration and goal, the thing you're most proud of, eventually won't matter. It all fades. It's all going to burn. It all goes away. I mean, let me illustrate that. When I was in high school, I went to school with a man named Bobby Morrow. Now I bet you nobody here knows who that is. Let me see the hands. Anybody ever hear of Bobby Morrow? Not a single. There's one. Why, are you a Texan? No? Well, Bobby Morrow was the fastest human being on earth. He ran a 100-yard dash. They called it yards in those days, a 100-yard dash. He went to the Olympics. He actually went to Abilene Christian University and ran in the Olympics and won 3 gold medals. And Sports Illustrated listed him as the Sportsman of the Year. That's a pretty big deal in the sports field. He was number 1, the best sportsman of the year, Bobby Morrow. My friend, I knew him. He knew my name. It was a big deal. Everybody knew Bobby Morrow. I went to Abilene Christian and spoke. There were 5,000 students there that night. He went to that school, and from there he went to the Olympics. There was nobody there that knew Bobby Morrow. How could that be? The world's fastest human being wins the Olympics, 3 gold medals, and nobody knows who he is. In time, it didn't matter. Look, just consider that. let's take some examples. 1923, who won the election for Senate in New Jersey? I mean, do you care? Do you know? It was a big deal at the time. At the time, there's a lot of cheering and everything. People were so excited. Who cares who won the World Series in 1925? Who cares? It went away. It was not really all that important. And so it is with so many things. Now, I want to ask you another question. You ever heard of somebody named Hugo Echner? Hugo Echner. I'll give you $100 if anybody can tell me who Hugo Echner was. Got it? Yeah. Are you used to lying? Hugo Echner at one time was the most famous man in the world. 1928. He built the dirigibles and the big Zeppelins, they were called in that time. And of course, those were all over the world, and his name was all over the world. Nobody knows who he is now. It doesn't matter. One more illustration. I know you know the name of Muhammad Ali, right? Let me see the hands of those you do. The rest of you are dumb. There's a reporter for Sports Illustrated named Red Smith who was assigned to go out and interview Muhammad Ali during the latter part of his life. And so he went out there and they did the interview on his ranch, kind of a farm that he has. And by that time he had Parkinson's disease, and it was kind of a sad story. And he wanted to talk to him about his victories and what his life had consisted of. It was an interesting article. And then at the end of the interview, Red Smith said, "Champ, let me see your trophies." And he said, "All right." He talked haltingly and walked with a limp, and he kind of shuffled, and he got up and said, "Come with me." And so he followed Muhammad Ali out across the yard and to his barn. And over in the corner of his barn was a whiteboard where he put the pictures of important moments in his life. There was the Thrilla in Manila, and you remember there was an African event. Anybody remember? Rumble in the Jungle was what it was called, and other things. And there was a picture of him with the big world champion belt that they wore when they won the world championship in boxing. Well, he had all those things there. Then Red looked more closely, and there were white streaks on it. And he looked up above, and there were pigeons up there that had dropped stuff onto his pictures. And Muhammad Ali made an unbelievable statement. He said, "Look at it. I had it all, and it wasn't nothing." That's what it came down to. The champion of the world's greatest fighter, says to the reporter, "I won everything, but it doesn't matter to me today." This is the way it is. And if you live long enough, life will trash your trophies. Now, if that's true, I want to ask you, what are you really living for? What really matters? Will it stand the test of time? Will it someday not only not matter to everybody else, it may not matter to you? And if that's true, should we not take a good hard look right now of what our goals are, what we're trying to accomplish, and what we will care about when, if you get it, you will care? That's pretty good questions, aren't they? To know what we are investing every day in. I want to give you a little test that you give to yourself. I call it the end of life test. When you get all the way down to the end of your life and you're looking back on what really mattered to you and what you feel like your greatest accomplishments were, and life is ebbing away, how will that change the picture? I want to tell you that I know the answer to that because I've been there. 27 years ago, I had a heart attack. And it was a serious heart attack. And the cardiologists tell me today that my heart is beating today and functioning like that of a young man who hasn't had a heart attack. The Lord was so gracious to me and so very kind. And I have a totally blocked LAD, which is the main artery. That's the one that feeds the whole bottom of the heart. And you lose that and you usually don't survive. And my heart quickly, the Lord's hand, went to work and built collateral arteries around that blockage. And today, my heart is functioning. There is a number that's given. If you ever have a heart exam, they will give you a number that's called the ejection fraction. And the normal ejection fraction is the amount of blood that's pumped by your heart with every beat. It's a percentage. And if you take all the young men and all the young women, all the people out there, and give their ejection fraction, those that are healthy will have an ejection fraction of about 60, or 60% of the blood is pumped with each beat. Mine is 60 at my age. It's unbelievable. But I didn't know that at the time that I had the heart attack. And for all I knew, my life was going to be very, very short. And so I lay there in the hospital bed for 10 days while they tried to figure out what I had. And I can tell you with certainty that it was not the books I've written. It was not the plaques on the wall. It was not all those things that you just saw in that video that represent highlights for me. It was not the presidents that I advised or worked with. It was not Ronald Reagan saying that he appreciated me. Those things don't matter in a moment like that. You want to know what matters? What does it all come down to? What really will stand the test of time for you? And as mostly of you are fairly young, what you've been thinking about, I just saw my first yawn. I better keep moving. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but we're taking names. That's all I can say. All right, so it was not all of those things. It was not the accomplishments. What it all comes down to are three things: who you loved, and who loved you, and what you did together in the service of the Lord. Nothing else will stand the test of time. And it all comes down to that. If that's true, shouldn't that not affect the way you live today? Should that not have something to do with what you do with each and every day? I got to tell you one more story. And this is from my catalog of most important moments. Let me see the hands of those of you who've ever heard of Pete Maravich.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. About half of you. Where have the other half of you been? Pete Maravich was one of the greatest basketball players in the history of the game. When he was in the 8th grade, people would come out to watch him play basketball because he was just one of those gifted people. His father was a coach. He used to lean out the window of the car and dribble all the way to town. There's not anything you could do with a basketball that Pete couldn't do. And he was Showtime before Magic was Showtime. He was an incredible basketball player. And he went on to LSU. He left 43 NC2A records, number of points per year and per game and all those things. And he went on into the pros. He was the first to get $1 million contract coming out of college. Pete Maravich did it all. There was nothing you could do that he didn't do. And he was a pro. He was probably one of the 10 best players that ever lived. The longer the time goes by, and more people are on that list. And so, I don't know, at one time, I think he was probably in the top 5. And he was not a nice man. He would have told you this. He was a womanizer. He was a drinker, heavy drinker. And he was just not somebody that you would choose as a friend. Despite all of his successes, it didn't satisfy him. He was looking for something. He didn't know what he was looking for. We know who it was now. It was Jesus Christ. And he was having a lot of trouble finding him. Well, he then went on through his career in the NBA, and his knees started bothering him, and he couldn't play anymore, and he retired. and was then sort of in limbo because here he had reached every goal that he needed to reach, and it wasn't enough and didn't satisfy him. And he stayed in his house for 2 years because he couldn't go anywhere. If he'd go to a restaurant, people would hound him for autographs and photographs, and it was just too much trouble, so he just stayed at home. And one morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning, he heard his name. Pete Maravich, Pete. And he sat up in bed. Somebody had told him at one point in his life about Jesus, and he remembered it, but he didn't know who he was. And he heard his name, and he sat up and he listened, and he heard it again. He got out of bed, got on his knees, and gave his heart to Christ. Amen. It was an unbelievable moment in his life. From that point on, for the next 5 years, he couldn't talk to you for 5 minutes without telling you what Jesus had done for him. It's when you come from the depths that you really understand sin and what Jesus can do for you and did do for him. And so this was his life. Well, he wasn't able to play basketball because he had a problem in his right shoulder, and they didn't know what it was, and so he didn't play any kind of basketball. Well, he had written a book about his dad. He led his dad to the Lord, and it was called Heir to a Dream, and I heard about it, and Pete and I got acquainted mostly through the phone, and I invited him to come out to Pasadena, California, where our ministry was, and ask if he would like to be a guest on my program. And he said yes, he'd like to come. So he came. That morning we met early in the morning, which is the only other reason I would get up that time of morning. And we got acquainted. I liked him. He seemed to like me. And we had what we called a pickup basketball game. I played basketball 3 times a week, about 2 hours at a crack. And it's one of the reasons that I survived that heart attack was all that exercise. And so Pete was there, and I thanked him for coming. And I'd asked him if he wanted to play basketball with us. And it was the most audacious thing I've ever done in my life. One of the great basketball players of all time. And I invited Ralph Drollinger, who had been a champion center at UCLA. He was 7'2", and I invited him to guard Pete because none of the rest of us could. And so we got together. In fact, you saw a picture of me in that gym where I had met Pete. We went ahead and we played for 45 minutes, and it was really fun. I'm telling you, I saw some moves I've never seen in my life. That guy was so good, even at that stage of his life and with this disability. And then we stopped, and everybody went to get a drink except Pete and me. And Pete and I stood talking to each other. And I said, Pete, you can't give up this game. It's meant too much to you. He said, I have loved playing today. I said, why don't you play? And he said, well, this problem with my shoulder. I haven't been able to pick up a two-pound ball until today. He said, the only time I played in the last year is in the Legends game. And he said, I just haven't been able to play. And I said, how do you feel about playing today? And he said, I've loved it. I've got to do more of this. And I said, well, why haven't you? And he told me. And then I said, Pete, how are you feeling today? And his last words were, I feel great. I promise you, those were his last words. I turned to walk away. I got about 10 feet away. And I turned and looked around just in time to see him fall. And he went down. He didn't fall like you crumple. His face hit the boards. And he hit him hard. But he had a great sense of humor. And I thought he was teasing, and I came over to him and I said, Pete, are you all right? By the way, he was wearing a T-shirt that said, looking unto Jesus. That was his whole life. And I knelt down beside him, and I saw that he was in a seizure. And I called for the other guys to come. Ralph Drollinger came, and he pumped his chest, and I did a mouth-to-mouth CPR. We never got another heartbeat, never got another breath. And Pete Maravich, at 40 years of age, one of the great athletes of all time, died in my arms that day. It was the most dramatic moment of my life. I was shocked beyond belief to see this great athlete just go to heaven. He just disappeared. And we called for the ER people, and they came. They worked on him for about 45 minutes or an hour. They couldn't revive him, and they declared him deceased. You can't imagine the impact of that for me. And because he lived in New Orleans, they invited us to follow the ambulance to the hospital. We were his family, essentially, and there were about 10 of us playing basketball that day. And we followed the ambulance, and they let us come into the room where he was lying on a table. And we were around him, crying and praying. We prayed for his 2 boys, for his wife, and that ended the affairs of Pete Maravich. By that time, the world all knew about this. And matter of fact, I got an email yesterday from ESPN asking to interview me about what I'm telling you right here. And I assume that it will be out in some period of time. But I didn't want to go to work. I just didn't feel like it. And I went home. I walked in the front door, and my 17-year-old Ryan was there. And I said, Ryan, come into my office. I need to talk to you. And he came in and sat down, and I said, Ryan, I need to tell you about the most important thing I've ever told you in my life. I want you to know something. I care about everything you care about, and I want you to make something out of yourself. I want you to turn your potentiality into actuality, and I will watch you the rest of your life. As you go through your life, I want to see you accomplish something. You're gifted, you're a smart kid, and I would like that. But I want to tell you, Ryan, there's something far more important to me than what you do with your life. The most important thing that I don't want you to forget is to be there. On that resurrection morning, I'm going to be looking for you. I will look all over heaven for you. The most important thing in the world is that you've given your heart to Jesus Christ, and I know you have, but you got to live for him. And I will be looking for you on that morning to see if you are there. Don't ever forget it. This is number one. This outranks every other thing. Be there. And I leave you with that thought this morning. All the other things fade away. All the other things get trashed. Everything else in the long run is not really that significant. But the only thing that will stand the test of time is that you be there